On this television, playing a great character, playing a great son on The Cosby Show.
Hollywood once made you believe that Malcolm Jamal Warner, Theo Huxtable from The Cosby Show, died in a drowning accident. But Ice Cube just shattered the wall of silence with a chilling statement. They tried to silence him. This isn't rumor. It's not a conspiracy theory. These are testimonies, evidence, and a memoir that has vanished. Malcolm once warned, "If I die, don't believe it was an accident." And just 48 hours before his death, he recorded a desperate podcast. Staying silent now is more dangerous than speaking out. The question is, who's pulling the strings? And why are the major media outlets staying completely silent? Don't miss this. Watch to the end, because the truth is about to change the way you see Hollywood forever. Malcolm Jamal Warner, the scandal-free star, and his fall from the throne. If Malcolm's death was nothing more than an unfortunate drowning accident at a Caribbean beach, then why would Ice Cube risk his reputation to speak out and expose the truth? And if there was nothing suspicious, why did a wave of evidence, manuscripts, emails, files, even his computer vanish immediately after his death? To understand why the entire Black Hollywood community was so shaken, we must turn back time to when Malcolm Jamal Warner was still America's golden boy, the one who brought warmth and laughter into millions of households through every episode of The Cosby Show. He wasn't just an actor, he was a cultural symbol embodying kindness, intelligence, discipline, and respect in the eyes of the public. Malcolm first appeared on screen in 1984 at age 14, playing Theo Huxtable, the clever, sometimes headstrong high school son of Dr. Cliff Huxtable, portrayed by Bill Cosby. And from there, a quiet star began to take form. Never loud, never scandalous, never chasing headlines. Malcolm was like a breeze of calm in a Hollywood torn between controversy and artificial glitz. The Cosby Show quickly became America's #1 show-topping Nielsen ratings for 5 consecutive seasons, 1985 to 1989. And through 8 seasons, 1984 to 1992, Malcolm became a familiar presence in homes across the U.S., especially within Black families longing for positive, aspirational role models on screen. While other teen stars spiraled into partying, substance abuse, or tabloid-fueled romances, Malcolm chose school music and writing. In 2003, he released his debut spoken-word album, The Miles Long Mixtape, a deeply personal, socially conscious work that reflected his thoughtful mind and poetic soul. As he matured, he grew more private. No flashy dating scandals, no substance abuse headlines, no arrests caught on camera. If you Googled Malcolm Jamal Warner scandal, you'd likely get nothing. An almost suspiciously clean record. Even when his TV fame faded, Malcolm stayed true to his craft with guest roles in Sons of Anarchy Suits' American Crime Story Sneaky Pete, and most recently as Dr. A.J. Austin in The Resident 2018-2021. That role again proved his depth and understated yet commanding presence. A leading man who didn't need to shout to own the screen. Off-screen, Malcolm was also a skilled musician. In 2015, he earned a Grammy nomination for his work as a spoken-word artist on the album Motivational Music for the Broke Volume 1. Over more than 3 decades in the industry, he remained unwaveringly himself. Intelligent, creative, private, and independent. To friends, he was a listener. To peers, a gentleman. To fans, he was the grown-up version of the kid they once laughed with on the couch. On fan forums, you'd often see him affectionately called Hollywood's most underrated soul. Which is exactly why his death at age 54 sent shockwaves, not just because the industry lost an artist, but because the last scandal-free man in Hollywood was suddenly gone. His passing felt like a fall from the highest moral pedestal. Not because he fell, but perhaps because he reached too close to something forbidden. That's what made Ice Cube's statement, "They silenced Malcolm," so explosive. It wasn't a baseless accusation against a troubled figure. It was a warning from a powerful voice about a man no one ever imagined would be targeted. If you want to silence someone, you choose someone with a voice. But if you want the world to never question it, you silence someone. No one expects to speak out. And Malcolm Jamal Warner, too kind, too honest, too clean, was the perfect candidate for a death no one would question. Except, a few people did. And Ice Cube was the first to break that silence. Which means the story doesn't end here. It's only just begun. Death in paradise and the details that never add up. You don't get to choose where you die. But the way Malcolm Jamal Warner left this world on a stunning beach in Costa Rica has left millions unable to accept it. A drowning accident. A riptide. For someone as cautious as Malcolm, who avoided any risk in his personal life, that explanation feels slippery. According to the official report on July 20, 2025, Malcolm, then on vacation at the Puerto Viejo coast in Limon province, was said to have swum too far into deep waters near Piacacal Beach. A rip current pulled him away, and he was found minutes later, unresponsive. Costa Rican Red Cross personnel attempted to resuscitate him, but failed. The forensic report listed the cause of death as asphyxiation by drowning, and the incident was ruled an accident. End of story. Not even close. This is where it begins. Just hours after the news broke, social media erupted with questions. And the biggest among them, why did everything happen so fast? Less than 24 hours after Malcolm's body was discovered, he was cremated. No public funeral, no detailed obituary from the family, no press conference from U.S. authorities. And more shockingly, according to several close sources, neither his mother nor his very private wife had consented to the cremation. A decision as sudden as it was chilling. And even more disturbing was the disappearance of his most important personal belongings, including his laptop backup hard drives, phone, personal notebooks, and an entire 300-page memoir manuscript. When Malcolm's belongings were shipped back to the U.S., the computer was missing emails were confirmed to have been wiped from the system, and the backup drives suddenly became inaccessible. Some of those closest to him raised the unthinkable, someone got there first. And then witnesses began to emerge, each with a scattered fragment of memory. But together, the picture became unsettlingly murky. One person claimed Malcolm had a heated argument with an unknown man right on the beach just hours before his disappearance. Another said he looked extremely tense, like he was watching something beyond the frame. Yet strangely, there were no police reports of any altercation or suspected crime in the area that day. All the information seemed to exist in a shadow zone between testimony and the system's silence. One detail that gave many people chills was the final recording in Malcolm's podcast, made just 48 hours before he died, titled, "When They Won't Let You Speak." In it, he speaks with a shaky, exhausted voice. "There comes a time when silence is more dangerous than the truth. I'm already there." Ice Cube. The first person to publicly question Malcolm's death stated that he didn't believe it was an accident. He said Malcolm was being watched, haunted by eyes behind his back, avoiding crowds, canceling meetings, whispering even in private spaces. Malcolm had once told him bluntly, "They won't let me speak, and if I die, they'll call it an accident." Now he's dead. And just as he said, it's being called an accident. But here's another strange thing. Bill Cosby, who for over a decade referred to Malcolm as his TV son, didn't post a single tribute or condolence. No tweets, no statement, no comments, nothing. That silence roared like a scream. And Ice Cube made it clear, it's that silence that says the most. So what really happened in Costa Rica? Was it truly an accident? Or a carefully orchestrated plan with an ideal location, legal backing, and the perfect victim? Someone the world would never suspect. The answer isn't clear, but the puzzle pieces are surfacing. And the more people see the whole picture, the harder it is to call this a coincidence. Because when the details don't line up, it's no longer random. It's staged. A chilling warning. If I die, don't believe it was an accident. As the news of Malcolm Jamal Warner's death in Costa Rica spread, many fans revisited a chilling quote allegedly from him. "If anything happens to me, they'll say it was an accident." Don't believe that. Though never officially confirmed by his family or colleagues, the quote circulated like a foreboding signal from Malcolm himself, leaving a lingering question across social media and in the hearts of the public. In truth, Malcolm's final months were anything but peaceful. Several close sources reported that he began to show unusual behavior, avoiding public appearances, canceling scheduled events, even declining a talk show he'd already confirmed. Rumors circulated that he frequently changed cars, avoided traveling at night, and always used burner phones to avoid being tracked. A longtime friend recalled Malcolm saying he believed someone was monitoring his computer and phone. While no one could verify that claim, his behavioral changes and abnormal reclusiveness left many wondering. Some media outlets reported signs of prolonged depression in his final phase of life. A few sources said he experienced insomnia, erratic eating habits, and became increasingly suspicious of his surroundings. However, those close to him denied this narrative. A producer who worked with him in 2022 shared Malcolm was sharp. He was meticulous, hardworking, and took every project seriously. No one thought he was falling apart. A notable point before his death, Malcolm was reportedly writing a memoir. This project was never officially announced, but some of his friends confirmed it existed. A source from the publishing world stated, "The book was intended to reveal some things that had never been spoken about Hollywood, a place Malcolm had been part of since age 14. Though the content remains unknown, the fact that someone as private as Malcolm was ready to tell his full story right in the middle of apparent instability led to deep suspicions about how sensitive that material might have been." One of the most viral yet unverified accounts came from someone who claimed Malcolm called Ice Cube at 3 a.m. and whispered, "They're watching me." Ice Cube has neither confirmed nor denied this claim, and no audio or written record has ever been released. But the spread of that quote alone was enough to ignite countless theories, from threats linked to the memoir project to far darker scenarios tied to the dark side of Hollywood. Then again, maybe it was all just coincidence. An artist once at the peak of fame, slowly fading from the spotlight, could have been struggling with fears and personal demons no one truly understood. Fragmented statements, vague signs, maybe just the echoes of loneliness in a world that once celebrated him, then quietly forgot. But whether coincidence or genuine warning, Malcolm Jamal Warner's death still leaves many unanswered questions, from the location timing to his health status, prompting people to return to that haunting cautionary phrase, "Don't believe it if they say it was an accident." The Buried Alive memoir, hidden in plain sight. Malcolm Jamal Warner was once an iconic face for African American youth in the 1980s and 90s, but in his final years, he was no longer the golden boy of television. Instead, Malcolm had become a living witness to truths Hollywood never wanted the public to know. And he decided to tell it all in a memoir that was buried alive shortly after his sudden death, Hidden in Plain Sight. That title, Hidden in Plain Sight, was like a quiet declaration. Some truths don't lie in secrecy, but right where the public sees them every day on screens at award shows amidst smiles and camera flashes. But because they're so familiar, no one questions them. The project was started by Malcolm in 2021, according to a friend in the publishing industry in New York. The original manuscript was over 300 pages, written by hand and later transcribed into an encrypted digital version stored on an offline hard drive. Malcolm called it his last ticket to tell everything a move both courageous and desperate. What made Hidden in Plain Sight remarkable was not just its content, but the way he opened the manuscript. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer alive." That wasn't a gimmick. For Malcolm, it was a warning and a piece of evidence. In the book's early chapters, he recounted in detail the darker side behind the scenes of The Cosby Show, a place he once called his second home. Bill Cosby's double life, from beloved TV dad to a man wielding absolute power in real life, was drawn with a cold, haunting clarity. Malcolm didn't name everyone explicitly, but through subtle metaphors, readers could easily tell who was who. He wrote about being called into rooms alone, about non-disclosure agreements, NDAs he was made to sign after each season, and the generous payouts that came with gentle threats. You wouldn't want to lose your career, would you? Another chapter dove into what Malcolm called the matrix of silence. According to him, not only Cosby, but a network of powerful media moguls, directors, and producers, both black and white, collaborated to build a system that laundered reputations for influential men. Media lawyers, PR firms, even the FBI, all appeared as pieces in a puzzle. Malcolm believed the average person couldn't even begin to imagine. The most controversial section tackled systemic racism in Hollywood. Despite being a teen star, Malcolm admitted he never felt like he belonged there. Every major role, every endorsement deal came with special conditions. At one point, he was even asked to obscure his African heritage in press materials to appeal better to the mainstream audience. And when Malcolm decided to go public with everything, the only person he confided in was his wife, his partner, for over 2 decades. In an email excerpted from the manuscript, she wrote, "Please wait a little longer. Wait until there's a legal team. I'm begging you, don't do this alone." Malcolm agreed to delay the official publication, but continued working on the manuscript and shared it with his 2 closest friends, one of whom was Ice Cube, who later confirmed that Malcolm once called him at 3 a.m., voice trembling. "They're watching me." The book was never officially released. After Malcolm's death, the entire original manuscript vanished. His family denied the memoir's existence. The publisher issued no statements. And the friend from the publishing world who had received Malcolm's final email left the industry and no longer speaks to the press. Some say the manuscript still exists hidden in a lawyer's safe or already destroyed. Others believe what Malcolm revealed was the product of an unstable mind. But to those who worked with him, who heard him whisper fragments of a much larger picture, Hidden in Plain Sight was not a work of fiction. It was a final cry for help and a piece of evidence that never saw the light of day. Ice Cube exposes. Hollywood is no place for the truth. Ice Cube isn't the kind of man who's easily manipulated. From the early days screaming, "Fox the police" with NWA to becoming a respected independent producer, he's always lived by his own rules, one of which is this: never turn your back on someone speaking the truth, no matter how much that truth terrifies Hollywood. And that's exactly what happened when Malcolm Jamal Warner came to him. No one expected that the beloved actor from The Cosby Show, with his kind face and warm smile, would be holding a ticking bomb capable of shattering the image of not just Bill Cosby, but the entire system that propped him up for decades. Malcolm said he no longer trusted the studio system. He had sent the manuscript of Hidden in Plain Sight to several publishers, only to receive strange rejections or complete silence. Something was being covered up, and Malcolm knew to expose the truth he had to take a different path. Ice Cube was that path. Malcolm didn't want a polished Hollywood-style documentary where everything goes through censors, sponsors, PR teams, and 10 rounds of edits to please the mainstream. He wanted to speak directly raw and unfiltered street style, an independently released project bypassing all studios. Not on Netflix, not Hulu, not HBO. I want it on YouTube. Or if it has to be, let it pass around by USB, Malcolm told Cube during a meeting in late 2022 in Inglewood. "I don't need money. I need people to know." Ice Cube nodded. "I get it. But you have to understand, if we play this game, there's no turning back." Weeks later, cracks began to show. A strange call came to Cube's phone, no number displayed. The voice was old, soft, but chilling. "I know you're involved in Malcolm's situation, but understand he's a problem that needs resolving. Don't make yourself one too." Cube recorded the call and sent it to a friend who had worked for the FBI. The verdict: that's classic threat language. This wasn't some amateur. Then came the anonymous email sent to the studio inbox of Cube Vision. Subject line: "Truth is expensive." The attachment: a screenshot of a section from the memoir, one that had never been publicly shared. This meant someone had stolen or copied content from Malcolm's devices. Around the same time, a strange black SUV began parking outside Malcolm's house every night. When he called the police, they came, looked around, and quietly left without a word. Bloggers who had previously written about the Malcolm Cosby connection went unusually silent. One of them, using the handle @TV Truth Hunter on X, formerly Twitter, posted a final message in March 2023. "They told me to stop. I think I should." The account went completely dark afterward. Ice Cube decided to go all in. He hired a cybersecurity team that had previously worked for tech companies in Silicon Valley to trace the source of the stolen manuscript. They discovered Malcolm's Google Drive had been accessed without permission from an IP address based in Burbank, the headquarters of a major studio, one of Cosby's former key partners in the 1990s. When Cube's team tried to dig further, they were blocked by a military-grade firewall, something extremely rare in civilian investigations, said the head of the security team. Word began to leak. Some former Cosby Show cast members began behaving strangely. Debbie Allen, choreographer, director, and producer of A Different World, a Cosby Show spin-off, hinted during an interview on The Breakfast Club. "There are things we can't say, because it's been too long, and maybe there are still people who need protecting." Listeners knew what she was or wasn't saying. Jaleel White, famous for playing Steve Urkel, posted a cryptic tweet: "Not everything you hear is truth, and not everything they hide is lie." The tweet got tens of thousands of shares before it was deleted within 12 hours. Tempest Bledsoe, who played Vanessa Huxtable, hadn't made a public appearance in nearly a year. Interviews were canceled, social media accounts frozen. When a reporter visited her LA home, a neighbor simply said, "She doesn't want to be involved anymore. I think she's scared." But the audience didn't stay silent. the hashtag #Justice for Malcolm began appearing under every old video of The Cosby Show. Fans called for a reinvestigation into Malcolm's sudden death, which is still labeled as natural stroke despite there being no public autopsy. At the same time, the hip-hop and indie film communities began spreading a second hashtag, Wow, Cube Said the Truth, a message of thanks and solidarity for Ice Cube, who risked his own reputation to protect his friend and defend a truth that was being strangled. Cube still hasn't released the footage Malcolm left behind, but he confirmed the first cut is complete. And if anything happens to him, it will automatically be released. There's no turning back now. The Fixer Boss Theory and the Network of Cover-Ups. In the final days of Malcolm Jamal Warner's peak career, a quiet undercurrent was shifting beneath the surface, a system so entrenched that no matter how intelligent or discreet Malcolm was, he couldn't escape it. According to unofficial notes found among the documents Ice Cube recovered, there was mention of a shadowy figure unnamed Unseen, known only by the alias Hollywood Fixer, a man described as the feather duster in a dusty castle, whose job was to clean up the messes that Hollywood's power players didn't want traced. This person could have tabloid headlines changed with a single phone call, could pay hundreds of thousands for silence, could rewrite the past, restructure the present, and shape a star's future with just a handshake. According to Ice Cube, Hollywood is not where you tell the truth. It's an ecosystem where truth gets negotiated, sugar-coated, and sold as a product, as long as someone behind the curtain profits. In a podcast interview, he spoke of Malcolm with unmistakable bitterness. Malcolm didn't want to play ball. He wouldn't sign contracts. He didn't go to networking dinners. And most importantly, he wanted to go public with what he knew. That made him a problem for a lot of people. Several leaked audio clips, never officially authenticated, but widely circulated on Reddit and X, contain a deep male voice speaking with command. If Malcolm won't go under, then the water will pull him down. In that context, Ice Cube referred to the entire system as the Empire of Silence, an empire with eyes, ears, and a brutal hand hidden beneath a velvet glove. Many people in the industry tried to speak up, but either they were ignored or they backed off quickly. A television director who once worked with Malcolm recalled, "I got a strange call after I made some positive comments about the documentary project. The message was just 3 words, don't do it. No follow-up. But a week later, I lost my spot on a major show." A music producer shared that Malcolm was effectively blacklisted across the entire industry. No company would collaborate. No networks wanted his name attached to any project. No interviews were offered. It was like someone flipped a switch, suddenly everyone turned their backs, the producer said. Shows Malcolm had appeared on were suddenly pulled. Advertising deals vanished without explanation. Promised roles in major blockbusters were no longer a good fit. Worse yet, people who had once been friends and Defender's colleagues who'd spoken out in his favor either went silent or deliberately distanced themselves. The media, meanwhile, turned its focus to his personal life, digging into old relationships and blowing up minor incidents as if attempting to twist Malcolm's public image into someone unstable, shady, and difficult to work with. And so a man once known as the face of America's childhood, the wholesome icon from The Cosby Show, vanished from the spotlight without a goodbye. No major scandal, no official retirement statement, no clear explanation, only silence. A silence that leaves one unavoidable question. Who created that silence? And why? Final podcast, When They Won't Let You Speak, a recorded truth. Just 48 hours before Malcolm Jamal Warner was found dead in a seaside villa in Costa Rica, he recorded a strange and haunting podcast. The episode, titled When They Won't Let You Speak, was quietly uploaded to an independent audio-visual platform, without promotion, without announcement. But its content sent chills down the spines of those who heard it, because of its raw honesty and the feeling that it might be a final message. Malcolm's voice in the podcast was deep, raspy, heavy with fatigue, like someone burdened for far too long who had finally stopped trying to hide it. He opened with a line that would later be repeated endlessly across social media. "There comes a point when silence is more dangerous than truth. I'm there now." For 27 minutes, he didn't name anyone directly, but his voice echoed between long silences, as if he were battling himself just to choose the right words. Malcolm spoke of betrayal not from a single person, but from an entire system. He described feeling drained, with no one left to trust, no safe space to speak the truth. He never mentioned Bill Cosby, but he did speak of a thick curtain over the industry, a network that shreds truth into screenplays. He spoke of being forced to smile on red carpets while screaming inside. One of the most chilling quotes from the podcast was, "You think it's about talent, it's about compliance. You're either in the illusion or out." He called the entertainment industry an empire of image-making, not humanity, where artists who refuse to obey are erased from public reality. Strangely, just hours after being posted, the podcast episode disappeared from all platforms. The upload channel was locked, and all backup copies became inaccessible. Many believe this was a coordinated act of censorship. Still, some fans had already downloaded the audio and began reposting it across Reddit 4chan, and various independent outlets turning the podcast into a legendary document passed around in whispered awe. Since then, When They Won't Let You Speak has become more than a podcast title. It's become a symbol of a man who was once the golden face of American television, now brave enough to say aloud what so many others only dared whisper in the shadows. And more terrifying still, it became the final chapter of his life, recorded as a farewell, tinged with warning. The Quiet Resistance. What Malcolm Jamal Warner left behind wasn't just a 27-minute podcast or a few shocking quotes. It was a slow-burning spark, one that began to spread quietly through the heart of Hollywood, a place seemingly filled only with formulaic films and safe faces. After his final podcast was pulled from all platforms, an unexpected undercurrent began to rise. No protests, no hashtags, no loud campaigns, just whispers. Subtle lines embedded in film credits. Quotes from Malcolm appearing on the social media profiles of young actors like a quiet vow. The phrase, "You're either in the illusion or out," became an unofficial motto for a new generation of independent filmmakers. Some indie projects began openly citing inspiration from those who spoke the truth and paid the price. In closed-door seminars at film schools, people started discussing ecosystems of information control, about forces that everyone knows exist, but no one dares name. While mainstream media chose total silence, independent podcast platforms, small YouTube channels, and anonymous Substack articles began peeling back the layers. But not everyone escaped the consequences. Several bloggers who first reported on Malcolm's death had their social media accounts banned. A journalist who covered the podcast episode was threatened with a lawsuit for violating terms of service. The community following this story now resorts to encryption sharing content through decentralized platforms, almost as if they're guarding a suppressed manifesto. In a rare public appearance after her son's death, Pamela Warner quietly stated, "My son lived with purpose, and he left with unfinished business." That wasn't just the grief of a mother. It was an acknowledgement something remained unsaid. And perhaps it is that very thing that has ignited this growing resistance, not to seek revenge, but to finish what Malcolm couldn't. Hollywood can hide many things, but not the truth forever. The story of Malcolm Jamal Warner from the spotlight to a silence too suspicious goes beyond personal tragedy. It reflects an entire system. As the evidence, testimonies, and voices of resistance grow louder, there's only one thing we must never do: turn away. If you believe the truth deserves to be heard, share this video so more people can know. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because behind the spotlight, there are still stories left untold. And we will not stop.